So my name is Sara Carlsén, and I am the Biodiversity Coordinator at Boliden. And we are, of course, a mining company. We have 5 mines in Sweden, Finland, Ireland. We also do prospecting, and we have smelters. So sort of the whole value chain of mining and metals. And I will share with you a little bit about our biodiversity commitment, and also how the mining industry in general is working with biodiversity. And then we are also preparing a roadmap for how to actually achieve that commitment. And I'll show you a little bit about that. And then I will also share with you how we're planning to measure our progress. So mining, of course, has a big impact on biodiversity in many different ways, but I guess you would say mainly through the development of land and conversion from natural habitat to mines, but as well through pollution and carbon dioxide emissions. So yeah, historically, the mining industry has had quite a large impact on biodiversity, and we're now trying to address this in a bigger perspective. And we have a lot of reasons for working with biodiversity, actually, except from just doing the right thing. Of course, previous speakers have mentioned the external drivers, new global goals, EU biodiversity strategy, new reporting directives, increased pressures from investors. We actually think that some of these things, for example, being able to show that we contribute to biodiversity in a good way, will create opportunities, particularly when it comes to an investor perspective. But we also have internal drivers for working with biodiversity as well. We believe that it will strengthen our social license to operate, which is very important to gaining new permitting or facilitate permitting processes, attracting and retaining staff, building a positive reputation, as well as ensuring safe and sustainable closures. And it's also in line with our general vision and values. So the ICMM, the International Council of Metals and Minerals, are in the process of setting a new commitment for nature positive mining. Yes, the idea is that from 2020 we'll have 0 net loss of nature, changing that trajectory by 2030 to a positive trend, and full recovery by 2050. And this commitment is being developed right now and will be launched in 2023. And from a Swedish perspective, we launched our commitment through Twemin, the Swedish mining and metals industry. We launched a roadmap for biodiversity in 2019. That is a commitment for all members to increase biodiversity by 2030. And the roadmap is called Mining with Nature. And I've added some links and resources if you want to have a closer look at that later. So then Boliden's biodiversity commitment, we also set our commitment in 2020. And our target is to increase biodiversity in all regions where we operate by 2030. And we are currently measuring this. The KPI we're using is the number of biodiversity activities, which is perhaps not the most accurate measurement. So we're hoping to improve that in the future. And we are also committed to using the mitigation hierarchy. And some of the previous speakers talked about compensation. and how it's important to, when you work with biodiversity compensation or offsetting, you need to consider all other aspects first. So of course, first you need to avoid impact wherever possible, minimize impacts that cannot be avoided, restore biodiversity in impacted land, and as a very last step, ecological compensation. So how are we going to implement this commitment? We're currently developing a biodiversity roadmap that is aiming to define the scope and make up activity and time plans and develop better indicators for progress and reporting. And some of you who are familiar with the Science-Based Targets Network probably recognize this illustration. This sort of illustrates where we our spheres of control. So we in the mining industry, the area where we have the most impact, but also the most control, is our land holdings and operational sites. And then, of course, our value chains. But in our roadmap, we're also aiming to increase our influence to inspire wider change, system-wide change, through inspiring other businesses, for example, and collaborating with stakeholders in research. So we're focusing mainly on our own land holdings because we do own a lot of land. We are active business units that is operational mines and smelters, are around 9,800 hectares. But we also have a substantial amount of forestry property and other land consisting of, for example, wetlands or unproductive forests, or legacy sites. And these non-operational areas we see a large potential in contributing to biodiversity in these areas. So I can't actually show you the roadmap because it's not been launched yet. I was hoping that it would be published by today, but I'm going to show you some of the activities and how we're going to work, and I can show you that we're creating an overall roadmap, but it's very important for us that it's integrated throughout the entire business. So we're updating it, the biodiversity commitment, the mines and smelter strategy, requirements for sites, what sites have to do, reviewing activity plans, guidance documents. So it's that's one of the most important points is integration through and mainstreaming throughout the business. And what we're developing is milestones, what we need to achieve, and that can be, for example, related to ecological restoration of all closed sites, and then related to that milestone is a set of principles, how we're going to work with restoration, indicators, how to measure progress. That might be, for example, hectares of restored land, and then activities. And that would be practically, listing, for example, which areas we should start developing plans for and implementing activities at. So I'll just show you some of the activities we're implementing now. And I talked about integration throughout all of the business, and one important way to do that is through biodiversity training, and to make not only the staff who work with sustainability, but all staff aware of the importance of biodiversity and how we are affecting it in our daily work. So together with Svemin through the Mining with Nature project, we have developed this digital training platform. So it's a sort of a website where our staff can click around and learn about biodiversity, both about the background, the importance of biodiversity, the importance to business, and get lots of good example and practices, good practice examples from the mining industry. Yes, allocating responsibilities is also a very important point for us. So making sure that somebody at every site is responsible for implementing biodiversity activities, for example, and making sure they have the enough training to do so. So at site level, at our mines, we're going to work with biodiversity management plans, and this is an example of how the activity plan for a biodiversity management plan can look like. This is for the mine in Garpenberg. So it's basically just activities divided into sub areas, and we're specifying which year it should be implemented, what time of the year. Sometimes, for example, we have some activities about removing invasive species, and that should be done at the beginning of summer before flowering season. And then you can't see that here, but we've also allocate responsibilities. And this will also be used for collecting information for reporting later on. So this is sort of very practical how to implement activities on site. Also, each activity will be connected to an ID number in GIS, so that it's easy for site personnel to see where it needs to be performed. So if you don't have to look, for example, for the invasive species, you know exactly where they are. We're also going to work a lot with greening the industrial areas, or that's our active mine sites and smelters. I borrowed these pictures from LKAB, a fellow mining company, because I think it's just very good. That's, in today's mine sites, we have a lot of bare ground areas, and even though we can't actually restore them, or we're going to use some of these areas again at some point, we can create temporary habitats. So the aim is to at any one time keep the industrial area as green as possible, and this creates additional benefits, such as dust suppression and erosion control, and an improved work environment and well-being for staff, for example. We also do a lot of ecological restoration of our closed mine sites, and the aim is that all restoration efforts should create values for biodiversity. So this illustration is from the Långdal mine, where we're, for example, creating broadleaf forests and meadows, and as well as recreational areas and playgrounds. Another example from one of our restoration plans for the Boliden industrial area. This is a before picture, and we have this photo montage of how we're imagining when we finish restoration, how it might look like. We also have an indicator of how long we might take. So this is a long-term commitment to recreate nature at closed mine sites. We do work with ecological compensation to actually achieve a net increase in biodiversity, we believe we have to, because we do develop quite a lot of land around our mining areas. This is an example from the Aitik mine, that big pit that was mentioned in the beginning, where we developed 170 hectares of very nice old growth forest, and which was compensated by 840 hectares, where we actually moved a lot of the dead wood logs, as well as did other conservation and restoration efforts. As you probably saw, we do have a lot of forestry as well, and we're working with sustainably, or we're aiming to transition to sustainable forestry methods, and that includes a mix of continuity forestry and conservation measures such as conservation burning and creating deadwood. Yeah, and we also contribute to research and development in the biodiversity area, and one of the projects that we've been a contributor to, and that I'm in the steering group for, is the CLIMB biodiversity metric. So CLIMB stands for Changing Land Use Impact on Biodiversity, and it was an initiative that started from industry in 2020, and co-financed by several companies, Boliden among those. But it's now also been financed by Vinnova, and the tool has been developed by EcoGain. But there's also been an advisory board from academia and other experts. And the first version will launch in September in 2023. So we're planning to use CLIMB to calculate the impacts on biodiversity on our land use change. So when we're developing, or when developing land, or doing restoration or compensation efforts, we'll use the CLIMB tool to make sure that we reach a net increase. And the CLIMB metric it's been developed from the British DEFRA biodiversity metric, which is an established tool, and has been used for several years in the UK, but adapted for Scandinavian nature types, based on the Swedish standard of nature surveys, where nature is classified into 7 classes. And what's really interesting, here, is that it reaches from class 1, which is the highest biodiversity value, all the way down to class 7, which is basically bare ground or paved ground, no biodiversity value. And there's a formula for calculating the metric, which we calculate a formula both for the baseline as well as the impact and compensation area. So for the baseline, you use the area times conservation value times landscape value to get your biodiversity points. So sounds quite similar, a little bit similar to the biodiversity credits that we heard previously, or the biodiversity points used for biodiversity credits, as heard previously. Yeah, so I think actually that was the end of my slides. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Thank you. You get a big applause at the moment here. Just for clarification, when you talked about a lot about how you develop strategies for minimizing harm when you're developing land, and you also said that you were managing some land for improved biodiversity. But I think this is mainly for internal use, So you develop your total land area in a way so that you compensate on your own land when you develop land for mining. So that is like within Boliden activity, or do you sell or buy credits or projects outside Boliden?
No, we don't. We're quite lucky in that we actually own a lot of land, so that we're able to do compensation or restoration efforts on our own land. But I mean, who knows how it would look like in the future? We're really looking forward to a biocredit system, because we think that needs this sort of way of thinking of offsetting biodiversity, but also to avoid biodiversity impact in the first place. I think that more businesses need to apply them, and not all businesses have access to this much land that they can do their own measures. So I think it'd be really good with a biodiversity credit system in Sweden.
Okay, but then I have a follow-up question. And since you seem to be working quite a lot with management for biodiversity, and I also know that, for example, that you're investing in true basic research. I mean, up in the ITIC area, you have also, I think, you have financed a PhD student, at least one, perhaps more, but. On these compensation areas where there has been a lot of very, very innovative research done, where you have been transplanting dead wood from the developed land into old growth forests. So you have enriched. I think you showed a picture of that. You have done it, and this is an important research infrastructure today. I think that there are quite many universities working up there, and there are now is coming lots of publications from this area. Then, so how do you? In what way do you utilize all the knowledge that you develop, so to say, locally then within the Boliden mining company activities? Because I think that you produce a lot of knowledge for not only developing land for mining, but also developing land for biodiversity. But have you any strategy for sharing this knowledge?
Well, we share the knowledge within STEMIN, the Swedish Mining Association. We have a nature working group, and we're meeting regularly, and we also have this development project, Mining with Nature. It actually has a continuation now, where we're developing things like guidances and best practices. So things like that would eventually be integrated, I hope. But we do share a lot of knowledge, but perhaps it should be shared outside of the mining industry as well, in a broader context. Because I think, like you said, especially this project with transplanting deadwood is very interesting, and I'm not sure if it's been done before on such a big scale, anyways.
I am quite sure that it has not been done at that scale. I mean, it's not every day that nature conservation researchers get their hands on 500, 600, 700-year-old pine trees that are going to be dead anyway, and can do something with it. So it's a kind of a unique research infrastructure. But as you heard from the two speakers before you, they have some really open arms here, inviting people with knowledge, and perhaps that Boliden should consider then to be an active partner in this Swedish Biocredit Alliance and share the knowledge, since you're a little bit of a pioneer of already managing land for biodiversity. So it's worthwhile thinking of, and perhaps also for Bengt and Maria, that don't let her dust disappear.
No, that sounds very interesting. You're welcome to contact me. Thank you.